Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Rosa Nubini podcast. My name is Manas Chawla, and I'm really pleased to be joined by CEO and Head of Research, Brunello Rosa. This week, we're discussing how central banks will be weighing their next move in the January round of meetings. Quite a few central banks to get through, but let's start in Asia. Brunello, can you start off by telling us what the Bank of Japan is doing to its policy stance?
Sure. It is an intensive cycle of central bank meetings between this week and the one uh, prior. Starting from Asia, Bank of Japan. Um, Market participants were waiting for some indications of what the Bank of Japan could do in March or April, knowing that nothing will happen in January. In fact, nothing did happen. Uh, Not great news from this front. I mean, Governor Ueda was still relatively thin in terms of indications of when some of these extraordinary measures would be removed, YCC, QQE, and whatever. Um, they were hoping for clear indications, but nothing. If anything, Ueda um, um, during the press conference reiterated that there is some confidence that eventually these measures will be removed. And maybe in a sign of optimism, they said that this confidence is increasing. It's not just clear when it would be enough for the BOJ to remove these extraordinary easing measures. I mean, they've been there in the past, inflation overshooting the target for some time, but then returning below 2%. And then restarting the entire easing cycle is so much harder than can continuing and then eventually removing. So Bank of Japan is big in the middle of somehow nowhere, but eventually these extraordinary measures will be removed. Clearly, the most important thing is that this positive spillover between wage growth and price formation will continue. In most countries, the wage price spiral is seen with some suspicion, but in Japan is actually what is needed to make sure that wage increases are then reflected in price formation, and so price increases are consistent. But so far, uh, mm, nothing.
And in Europe, the European Central Bank has also left its key policy rates unchanged. Was the reason behind that quite similar as well, would you say?
Yeah, so the key point there is that the ECB considers premature any discussion on rate cuts. The reality is, though, there are the usual two camps, doves and hawks within the central bank governing council, and they need to find kind of a common ground, kind of an agreement. Some hawks would like to not even cut ever in 2024. There's so much more moderate hawks will probably want to get to, say, September, October. Hard to get there. The Uber dogs will like cut in March, again, possible. So a decent compromise is probably around Q2. And then this could be either April or June. Our cards are on April, but we recognize that it might need some convincing. And also, they said quite explicitly that they want to see some wage growth data before deciding, and they might become available only at the end of April, meaning that they will be clear in May, which then could pave the way for a June rate. Fair enough. It will be just 6 weeks later than April. Not major, but the ECB at least seems to be on the move in their reasoning.
And there seems to be two sort of extreme positions here. Could you sort of compare and contrast between those for us?
Yeah, so as I was saying, uh, Uber Hawks, Uber Dogs, uh, they will want October versus March compromise most likely in Q2.
And then let's take together the Bank of England. I mean, that policy meeting is happening this week. What is it likely to do? Is it likely to follow sort of stack with the rest of the central banks?
Yeah, so Bank of England and Federal Reserve have met this week and gave their policy response. So Bank of England, they dropped the hiking bias. They had a three-way split. Two wanted to hike, one wanted to cut, and six wanted to stay where they are. And effectively, this is what happened. But this means that the ship is turning, and clearly from a very obvious tightening bias, now they kind of signal that they've reached the peak, and they might be ready to cut in coming months. When again, not easy to say. Again, we bet on Q2. May could be the right month, is another inflation report month or monetary policy report month, and therefore time to cut. If it takes 1 month or more to do some convincing from the more dovish component towards the more hawkish component that still exists. In fact, two members voted for a hike, Haskell and me. That's more than we expected. We expected at most one hawk to vote for a hike. If it's needed, again, 6 more weeks and probably we get into June.
And finally, finishing this world tour in America, the U.S. Federal Reserve has also kept its policy stance unchanged. Similar reasoning here.
Yeah, so okay, we finished with the largest, most important central bank in the world, the Fed. They also left the policy stance unchanged, but they also dropped the hiking bias. And it is obvious that the next move is a cut. Powell said they need to obtain greater confidence that the 6 months of good inflation data will continue for a little bit longer, and that inflation doesn't pick up again, and eventually they will deliver the cut the market is now expecting. Maybe not as many cuts as the market is expecting. The Fed is saying 3, the market is expecting 5 or 6. Maybe a happy medium is around 4. And this also depends on the timing of the first rate cut. It's possible that, in our view, this is going to happen at the May FOMC meeting. If is that the case, then the Fed has probably the time for 3, I would say maximum 4 cuts in 2024. More than that seems quite unlikely, also because inflation still needs to reach 2% to stay on a stable basis around that level.
Seems like, from all these preliminary considerations, the outside view would be that markets and central bank policy is quite calm. But whether or not this is a calm before the storm, I suppose we'll find out mostly in Q2 of this year, as you say. So much to wait and watch for. As always, Brunello, thank you so much for your time and insights.
Thank you. Until next time.